Hey everyone, before we get to this week's show, this is just your weekly reminder to please continue to pray for my wife, Lindsay. She is battling breast cancer right now, and we're praying for complete healing in Jesus' name. Thank you.
And what happened was I was in my room, and there are three of them leaning over me, and I came to because the pain was so intense. That's the only time I've woken up during procedures. It's because the pain. They're doing something up my nose, a couple of them. They go, he's up, he's awake. One of them comes around, got it, and they try to sedate me a little more. And then they're done. And the last one turns to me and goes, oh, and don't try to get that out of there because you could kill yourself. I was 5, 6. And you're seriously telling a child not to put his finger in his nose? The next morning, I wake up with a terrible nosebleed. And I call for my mom, Mom. And she pinches it, tilts my head back. She goes, this is so strange. Your father and I woke up with nosebleeds today. And my uncle and my aunt, they came over for coffee with my parents a little while later, and they said, well, we woke up with nosebleeds today. Huh. And my mother, who probably knew better, said, well, it's so dry in here. We should get a humidifier. It's probably so dry. That's why we all 5 of us woke up with nosebleeds.
All right, today we have Chris and Sean. Chris and Sean, how are you guys?
Great, Tony. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad you guys are here. You're brothers, and it's interesting because I've done this. I've had thousands of conversations, right? And I think we're around episode 750, something like that, 752 or 3 or something like that. But out of all the episodes that I've had, it is a rarity that you have 2 people, let alone family members, that are coming on together to share about shared experiences. Sometimes you have people coming on and they're like, we have Bigfoot on the property, and I saw it this time, and my brother saw it this time, and it's never overlapping. But for you guys, this is a lifelong thing, and there have been times where the experience involved you guys and other people, and I think that is a window into the phenomenon that we don't always get privy to. So, and also this starts off well before you guys even walked the earth, because your mom has been dealing with this stuff too. So I think what we're going to do today is we're going to start off with you guys sharing what you know about your mom's experiences. And then we're going to jump fast forward to 96, when you guys had a pretty dramatic experience that really was a shifting moment in your lives. And then from there, we're going to jump around. We'll probably go back in time to your childhood and start rehashing memories to where you guys are at today with, your experiences, because it's an ongoing thing. So welcome to the show, and please start us off with, your mom before you guys were even a thought.
Well, in 1959, our mother, Rosanna Larry, was walking her family dog. She was like 13. She was a girl. Beautiful, Irish Italian. She was great. And she was abducted into a triangle. This is 1959. Triangle craft overhead. The reason we know about this is when we were children. I mean, frankly, they've been taking me since I was 3, 1966. And Sean was born in 70. So, 72, 73, he's a veteran. But until this event in 1996, the aliens did a spectacular job of not allowing you to access the memories. So when we were children, we did not really think about UFOs, and we certainly didn't remember our experiences. I mean, there were glimpses all the time. There were moments, especially when you're younger, that you're able to, but we couldn't, and we weren't even interested in UFOs. But every time in the 1970s or the 1980s that some news report on the TV mentioned a UFO or UFO sighting, and it's not infrequent, there's been so many of these. But if we were at our grandparents' house, my mother's parents, soon as they heard UFO on television, they would say, "Oh, that's just like with Roseanne. Remember that? Roseanne, she said she was taken in a triangle. That's just the same kind of thing. Huh, how about that?" They didn't really examine it. I don't think they even considered it to be true, but they told us again and again. It stuck with them, you know? And what had happened was my mother was walking their family dog, a poodle. She had a poodle skirt on. She loved it. She's walking through the neighborhood, and she was only 2 blocks away. And it was a bright sunny afternoon, and she looks at the ground, suddenly shadow. And she sees the shadow cover the width of the road and onto the 2 lawns on the side with points. And she looks up, and she said there was a big triangle hovering over me. And we would press her for details, and she had some details. She goes, "Well, what was it mean?" She said it was metallic, that it was dark gray, like graphite or pencil lead. And were there seams, or was it smooth? There were seams. There were sections to it, she said. And she said there were little circular insets where they could have been lights or something. But she said in the center of the underside of it was a hatch that was open. And she's looking into it, and it is so completely black. And the next thing, it's night. The next thing, remember, she's standing in about the same spot in the neighborhood, and it is black. It is night. The dog's nowhere to be seen. And she didn't know how she got there. She walks home. Her parents were getting in the car. They called all her friends to see if she was somewhere in those 3 hours. But no one knew. And then the dog wandered home on his own. And they thought something was really wrong. They were going to go look for her. They were going to go to the police if they couldn't find her. Just as she's staggering up the driveway, their fears, "Where were you?" There was this triangle that was over me, and she said it was perfectly silent. And there was no engine, there was no wake, there was no noise, there's no obvious form of propulsion. It was just hovering over her. And we're talking like 20 feet. Not like, at 5,000 foot elevation. So that was that. And so we grew up hearing about this. This time a triangle took our mother, and we didn't take it seriously because they did a fantastic job. A lot of people make a mistake in thinking that the aliens' great advantage over us is their amazing advanced technology. It's not. Their technology is, of course, amazing. I mean, we'll never approach it, but it's their neurological ability to control your minds absolutely that is their advantage over us. I don't see any way around it. It's the only way they've managed to get away with abductions for 70 years, by making sure that the abductees do not remember it. Otherwise, they get up and run to the police or the National Guard. And if everybody who was being abducted woke up and called the Air Force or the governor, it would be very impossible for them to do what they've been doing for, 3/4 of a century now? Next year is 60 years since they first took me. I don't see anybody. In fact, I see less focus and interest on this ongoing invasion, invasion at the very least into your home, your mind, and your body. They do what they want with you.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably been going on for centuries. Like it's been going on for a long time. And I'm curious about your mom. So just so I have this straight, she experienced almost like time differently than everybody else. So where everybody else for 3 hours is looking for her, they don't know where she is. They in this timeline understand there's something wrong, something's going on. For her, did she ever remember anything other than just that flip of a switch where all of a sudden she's groggy walking up a driveway?
Well, I've never seen anything culturally that even approaches describing what it's like. And the missing time. We went with Bud Hopkins in 2005, and he came up to investigate our case. He said on CNN that ours was an important case because it involved an active duty police officer who was being returned from an abduction and witnessed. So, but he's the man who coined the phrase missing time. And there were many points where my mother and my father and Sean even, they were taken out of a family station wagon in 1984. And when they got home, it was midnight. They had driven less than a mile at 9 p.m. So there's a lot of that. And, but my mother did seem very much to retain a lot more knowledge about this than we usually had. Before Sean came along, it was 1967, 68, the Beatles are, making the White Album. And my mom, who was just 21, she had me very young. And we were home. The dad was working, God bless him, a 22-year-old guy out there making the rent, taking care of his kid, his wife. But so it's just me and mom at home. And I remember the night before they were there. They were there again the night before. And I retained just a bit of it. And my mother was combing her hair in the mirror, happy. And I said, Mom, who were those people who were here last night? And in that moment, she froze. She had this emotional reaction, overwhelming, and she turned ghostly white and red-faced at the same time, and she dropped the brush and she wheeled to face me. And I was 4 or 5. And she grabs me by the shoulders and she looks in my eyes and she kind of whispers, kind of shouts at the same time. We never, ever, ever talk about them. Never. Do you understand me? You don't tell anyone. You don't tell your friends. You don't tell your teacher. You don't even tell your father. And she shakes me. Do you understand me? And I said, okay. But why? She said, because they won't believe us. And I said, but it's true. She said, that doesn't matter. They will never believe us. And they will take you away from me. And they will give you to some other family. And I will never see you again. And I can't let that happen. So we never tell anyone. I said, okay. And she calms down. And, moms always, they have a way to kind of make it a positive thing if they can. And what she said was, besides, they don't take us all that much, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't know. I'm 4. How much is too much?
What do you mean us?
Yeah. Yes. But my early ones were, they would get her in a trance, wake her up, and she would walk into my room and take me by the hand and walk me out with them.
Gotcha.
It wasn't until it was a few weeks before, I can tell because we changed apartments a lot at that period, before we got a house. So I know what years these things took place. And they started taking me alone 68, May. It was May.
And you were born in 66?
I was born in 63.
63, okay.
And they started taking me when I was about 3 years old. Yeah. So, but So, mom's like 21 years old. She's got a family, and she's dealing with that, and she's dealing with aliens taking us. And that's going to be the hardest thing for a mother. I think until I mentioned it to her that time, that she kind of thought that I didn't know. So it was kind of more okay because he's not having to deal with it. And when I revealed to her that I did know, it sent her off. Because mothers are supposed to protect their children,
Yeah.
Every mother has sent to her kids at one point, there's no such thing as monsters. Little kids wake up in the night and there's a monster in the closet or the bed or the branches hitting the window, and moms come in and their job is to say, there's no such thing as monsters. You're safe. I'm here. But my mom knew that there were monsters.
Yeah,
and I feel throughout her life.
I feel like there's some moms that know, and whether it's the experience that they've had or they're married to a podcaster that talks to a lot of people. I've done a pretty poor job over the years of shielding my kids from some of this stuff. Not in a bad way, but in a I want to be overly protective way. And sometimes my kids are small. My daughter, she's smart, but not like my son. My son is extremely smart, and he just picks things up. Mm-hmm. And so he now.
Your daughter will hear that at some point.
Yeah, I know.
Like when you're long gone and like.
All right, so listen. So Gemma, I know you're like 20 years old now. When I said this, you were 4.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, I understand. I understand the mother hen type of, you just want to protect and make sure the children are safe. And I can only imagine the melting feeling your mom, like her blood pressure probably rose a lot in that moment. Like it's probably why her face turned red, because it's just like, hold on a second. That was like totally unexpected. The shot of adrenaline you get. And so it's clear that mom has had experiences, and you mentioned earlier how you guys really were in control of your own memories, and they had this ability to block the memories from you. And, as time goes on, you learn that, not only could they block them, but they could unlock them for you at times. So
here's what happens with that. Every time they show up, it's complete shock. The first time they show up, it's a huge, enormous shock. What are these creatures walking through my backyard or my back door? But because they make you forget every time, it's that shock. Oh, it's like a reverse Groundhog's Day. It's this shock every time. I remember looking at a gray, thinking it was the first time he's walking towards me. And I was still a kid. At this incident, I was like 9 or 10. And all I could think was, how is this thing alive? There's no way this can be real. It had legs like broomsticks and arms like broomsticks, so thin, no muscle. The neck was broomstick thin, but the head was this big upside down egg with kind of a point to the chin and the vestigial mouth and the big black eyes. In that moment, I remember thinking that head is going to just snap right off that tiny neck, and it's walking in this strange fashion. 1 minute it's life is what you know, and the next it's a surrealistic, it's a dolly painting.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like a creature like that could actually live. And there it was, loping its way through the backyard.
So, because I don't want to get off track with this question, but I do want to ask, because I think it might be a good foundational piece moving into the rest of this, with what you're just talking about. And Chris or Sean, you can chime in on this too if you feel like you have a perspective to offer. You guys are now in 2025, why do you think the memories are able to be recalled now for you to even talk about it here and now?
Sure. Well, it was one event. But before we get off Mom, Sean, there were times Sean was trying to describe to Mom that this was going on.
Yeah, as a child.
And what was her reaction?
Well, like one time it was my father started the reaction of laughing. They laughed at me one time. Another time she just told me, well, next time scream if they come in. And, I tried screaming and there was no sound that came out of my mouth. I was literally screaming, but you couldn't hear it. But
there was that one time, despite all that, she was very much trying to say it wasn't happening at that point. Keep in mind, Sean's, 7 years younger. This was a good 12 years after the incident I was talking about. One time he was coming in after an abduction and it was early evening. He was late for dinner. You're not allowed to be late for dinner without a really good excuse. And you come in and then what happened?
She asked where I was angrily. And I simply said I was with friends. And she said, oh, okay. Put down the plate, turned around, walked out of the room. Never said anything about it again.
Because if you had said, I was with friends under other circumstances, who?
Yeah. Where? Why weren't you here?
But this she knew. And just kind of.
Was it like a sixth sense that she just knew when you said friends that she knew what you were talking about?
Possibly. It's either that or
she had some kind of control over her mind
to accept that lame excuse and turn around and just leave.
The control can be so subtle. You think you're having your own ideas and thoughts, and they're planning it in your head. And you just go ahead and do things. And that was evident. Getting back to your question, why do we remember now?
Yeah, this is the 96 incident.
Until 1996, we didn't remember anything. Or, as I said, there were these little incidents that bubbled through it. The alien, I don't know what the reason, but the aliens included our little family in their, great big plans, and they never let go.
Just for a frame of reference, in 96, how old is everybody at this point? I mean, Sean, you're probably your early mid-20s?
I was 26.
Okay.
Been a police officer for 2 years at that point.
Okay.
And I was 33.
Okay.
And I know that so many people out there have no idea they've been abducted. They're going to go through their lives never knowing. Because if it wasn't for this
incident,
this series of errors that the aliens made for whatever reason, we would not be sitting here talking to you. We'd be going about the lives we led. So this is August 19th, 1996, and I was working at the time for the Saratoga Springs Police Department doing traffic and crowd control at a thoroughbred racetrack here in Saratoga. We host the Belmont Stakes. It's very big, doubles the population of the city, so it was a part-time gig. On this day, I couldn't wait to get out because my mom invited me over to her house. We're having a family barbecue. She's going to grill up burgers, dogs, swordfish. It's going to be great. And we're going to hang out by the pool. At a beautiful, 30-foot pool, diving board. It was wonderful. It was a great time. So I hurried over there. I got out about 5:45. I'm in the backyard by 6. There was my mother, my aunt, Missy, and her son, Philip, who was splashing around in the pool. He was like 8 or 9 at the time. We were waiting for Dad to come home before starting to grill up food. He was driving up from Albany. He commutes, and we're waiting for Sean to wake up and join us. Sean was living in my mother's house at the time, right? And in my old basement bedroom where the aliens certainly knew their way. You were what? Working overnight?
Yeah, I worked midnight shifts through most of my career, including at this time.
Yeah, so he had to sleep in the day. So I guess if they were going to take him, they would take him in the day. but they have to bring them back. And they completely things up. It's kind of hard to believe. And this is how subtle their control is and how effective. I sit down in a chaise lounge looking up at the sky, just relaxing, waiting for Sean to get up. And getting off my feet, I was in the road doing traffic all day. So I'm sitting there loving life, and Mom and Missy are talking over the table in the corner. For some reason, I pick up a old newspaper that's sitting on the table next to me. It's our local paper. It's terrible. We never read it. It's a rag. We don't get it. Missy must have brought it over. But I pick up the paper and I unfold it. You know, I don't just go through the page. I like this, you know, like when you hold like in the old 1950s sitcoms.
Yeah.
Where the dad
Dad's
would come
sitting
home
there.
from work,
Yeah.
want nothing to do with the wife and kids whatsoever. So the dog would bring him the slippers and paper, and he'd sit in his easy chair, and he would put up a paper barricade between him and whatever the hell his children wanted. Like Fred McMurray and My Three Sons, you know. But I do that. And that was the thought in my head. Why the hell am I suddenly Fred McMurray? I don't know. But I'm just sitting back. And what it was doing was it was effectively blocking my entire view of the sky. Just completely blocked. And then my mother says, "Hey, Chris, there's that UFO you said you wanted to see." We had a discussion recently. She knows what was going on, but she was kind of, the tone of her voice was, I thought she was busting my balls, right? "Oh, there's a UFO you want." And then if I lower the newspaper and look, it's a kite going by, or a Mylar balloon that says "Happy Birthday" or something. And they'd get a good laugh. And I'm not falling for it. So I kept the paper up. I kept it up. And then Missy says, very concerned, "What is that?" And my mother said in a different voice, "I don't know." And I thought, okay, you know, if you're going to all this trouble, I will take the paper, lower this stupid paper I'm not even reading. That's blocking my view. And I lowered, I'm like, okay, what? And it was this craft appearing, like coming in, materializing. At first, I thought it was very far away because it had a couple of qualities of something far away. It was kind of faint and faded, like over a distance. It was a little blurry, and it was warbling. So, like if you ever saw a hot air balloon, you know, at a balloon festival, the ones that are very far away, the colors are more faint and more indistinct just from the atmosphere. But as we watched it, it became more and more focused. It had like a heat mirage thing going on, you know, these warbly waves. But heat mirages just go up, you know, like on a hot road in the desert in summer. But it was kind of radiating these waves. And we're watching. We're not doing anything else. We're watching this thing. And then suddenly you can see that it's like a flattened sphere. That's all I could think. It was an oval disc, and it was gray, and there was a black band around the center. As I said, to this point, I never thought I saw anything. So I didn't think it was a flying saucer. What the hell is that? My first, and when you see something really weird, a lot of people will try to debunk by saying, "Oh, people leap to conclusions. They see anything weird, they think it's it's an alien ship." But really, it's the opposite. Your mind is looking for any rational explanation they can come up with. You know, a Budweiser blimp, just whatever. And I thought, because of its shape, and it's gray, and there's a black band around the center, I thought it was maybe a promotional balloon of the new Lucas prequel Star Wars trilogy, because it looked like the Death Star if somebody had deflated it. And what it really was a absolute classic, perfect flying saucer. And as we watched, it became more and more clear. And suddenly to the point where the sunlight was bouncing off it and there were shadows underneath. Before that, there was no lighting to it. And it's just crystal clear and it's spinning one way and then the other. And we're watching that.
I mean, the top opposite of the bottom.
Yes, the bottom is spinning one way, the top is spinning the other way.
With a black band in between.
With a black band separating them at the equator. So we're watching this and it's not moving on. We thought maybe we're seeing something weird and it's just going to pass by. No, it approached to over our property line between us and our neighbors, and maybe 40 feet in the air and maybe 40 feet from where we stood. And I looked at my mom and I looked at Missy and Phil. And they were in a trance. They were mouth open, staring, no expression on their face. And this had been 6 minutes already, and none of us had spoken. I hadn't even got up out of the chaise lounge, but suddenly I did. It was getting weird. And when you're under their influence, they take away fear and panic, but they still leave a curiosity. And I wanted to know more. I got up and I walked the length of her pool, and I was almost completely under it. And a voice said, don't stand under it. It could be dangerous. And I thought it was my thought. I go, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't. I back off. And then the craft on the black band, a round red light comes on, and it goes around and around the center, and it spins. It's spinning like a sparkler at a fair, and the whole craft lights up in this rose gold orange color with these little needles of light covering the whole thing. The whole thing, like a road flare. You know, that kind of magnesium pink orange with like kind of needles or of light. And my thought at that moment was, my first thought was, thank God I saw it before this. I never know what it is. There's a metal flying saucer underneath there. And I was finally using the words. And I looked at everybody's in a trance. I said, this could go south at any minute. I have no idea what's happening. This could be it for us. I'm going to go get Sean. Sean has a gun. I'm going to go wake him up. And I run to the back door, but I freeze at the back step because all of a sudden an idea in my head said, don't go get him. Look at this thing. You'll never get to see something like this again. You know, if you go inside, it's going to be gone. So watch it as long as you can. And it slowed me down for about 20 seconds. And then I said, no, I've got to go get Sean. And I head for his room. Now, this is where Sean enters the picture, right?
Yeah. While I was downstairs.
Before that, you were in the ship looking down.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, sorry.
Because I was supposed to be downstairs sleeping all day. It's all right.
Sorry.
I did the same to you. The first memory I have, I don't remember being taken. I don't remember where I was prior to this. The first memory I have is looking down into the backyard and seeing everybody around the pool and getting excited that everybody's there and I wanted to go swimming. I want to describe it as I'm not looking out a window. There's no small amount. It's a completely unobstructed view that I have of the backyard. I don't see the inside wall of the craft I'm in. I don't even know I'm in a craft at that point. I just know I'm at an elevated point looking down into my backyard and seeing the family there by the pool. I get excited. So I ask, and I must have known who I was asking at the time, but I don't remember arriving with them. I ask, can I go swimming? And that's when I hear and see a response. There's off to my right, maybe 10 feet away, maybe 12. there's a small gray alien. He leans forward at the waist and turns his head directly at me, and he says, "We're taking you to bed. You can get up and go swimming." And he even emphasized the word up. And then I noticed there were two other aliens standing directly behind me, one behind each shoulder, and they were a little bit taller. They were almost my height. And I was completely alert while I was standing there asking them if I could go swimming. Then I saw reflections off the pool water, like he described. It was flare-like, all just these tiny little points of light bouncing off the pool water. And the thought I had in my head at the time was, it must be the angle. It must be the sun's reflection off the water, and it just looks strange because I'm up in the air. It's a strange angle for me. Next thing I know, I'm in the basement, not in my bedroom, but like the living room down there. It's a little apartment. And I've got each arm over the shoulders of the two aliens that were behind me. And at this point, I'm completely groggy, similar to being drunk or on anesthesia right after a surgery or something. And I've been through a number of those, so I know how it feels. So I'm literally really groggy and having a hard time walking. They're holding me up and helping me to bed, just like they're helping a drunk friend to bed. You've seen it a million times. At least I've seen it a million times. And we're walking towards my bedroom, and I look to the one on my right arm and I say, "Thanks." And he doesn't respond. So I look to him again and thank him again. And his response was, I quote, "Yeah, yeah," and continued to get us into the bedroom. I don't remember being placed into the bed, but I remember I'm laying in the bed, and I hear one of them on the side of the bed go into an absolute panic. He says, "He's coming. We're going to get caught." And I've never seen anybody as scared as what I felt from him. I could feel his fear. And I'm thinking to myself, and the other one responds to him, cool as a cucumber, who's at the foot of my bed. He says, "No, he's not. Not yet."
And that was when I was running to get Sean, and I stopped. They had me stop and watch for a little bit longer.
And I didn't know that at the time, of course. So I'm thinking to myself, who are they talking about? Who could they possibly be afraid of catching them? Is there some
Right here.
supreme being on its way here to catch them in the act of doing this? And are they not supposed to be doing this? So it took every ounce of energy that I had to sit up in the bed, look directly at them. They're both at the foot of my bed at this point. And I say, "Who's coming?" And when I say and talk, we're using telepathy to communicate. I don't know how, but we are. And when they were talking to each other, I overheard them. So it's not just from one head to the other. Somehow I could overhear what two others are talking about. So I sit up, asked who's coming, and they were both kind of startled to see me sitting up. And they both turn to face me and they say in unison, "Go to sleep." And I couldn't resist it. I fell back down into the bed, started to drift off to sleep. And what seemed like immediately thereafter, I hear boom, 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 boom on my door. It's Chris. He says, exact words are, "Sean, get up. There's a UFO outside." And I tried to answer him telepathically because I was just using telepathy. And what I'm trying to say to him is, of course there is. They were just here, or they just left.
And what had happened was I had run down the stairs like 4 at a time after they initially held me up for 20 seconds. And I was going to throw his door open. And in my head, I had an idea or a thought, said, don't open his door. Sean has a gun. If you startle him, he could shoot you. And I know Sean keeps his gun locked up. He's not under his pillow like Ray Liotta and Goodfellas. But I said, oh, yeah, I guess I shouldn't. So I didn't throw his door open. And if I had, I would have caught them. I would have seen them. And you know what? I've thought about it many times what I would have done if I did. I would have screamed like a 5-year-old girl and probably ruined my pants because it would have been, you know. So I didn't, but I pounded on his door and John, and so hard, bam, 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 like a cop, you know, showing up at a domestic or something. And then I ran back upstairs. I can't wait for you to get up. Sean, get up. There's a UFO outside. Now run back up, and now the craft is moving away. It's over the next street, and it is no longer glowing like a road flare. It's silver again with the black band in the center. But what was weird about it was no longer like this. It was like this, like a wheel. And it was just loping its way over the neighbors' houses, heading east. And then Sean comes upstairs. And then Sean's girlfriend shows up. She had seen the craft. In the later stages of it, at least. I'm not sure at what point she entered, but Sean comes upstairs. And Mom and Missy and Phil and me and his girlfriend are flying saucer. It was right here. And Sean was in pain. I noticed he was wincing, like somebody who's been in a subterranean dungeon for a month and comes out in the sun. He was in pain. I thought, wow, I woke him up too soon. He's like, like he had a headache just trying to talk to us. So I said to him, he's got these great cars, classic cars. And and he had a sports car right there. Said, Sean, let's get in your car and let's follow it. I'm sure we can see it. You won't believe it. It's incredible. It's a real flying saucer. It's better. And he goes, okay. And we're driving east, but the craft had gone at a slight angle and the road goes this way and there's not a lot of cross roads. And I said to him, you wouldn't have believed it. You wouldn't have believed it, Sean. It was a flying saucer. It was over the house. It was like 10 minutes. And Sean said,
yeah, I said, you're right. Yeah, they were returning me.
yeah, they were returning me. And I thought to myself, oh man, he did not get enough sleep because and this is what I said. And in the retrospect that we have, it was kind of almost comical. I said to him, no, Sean, we're not talking about alien abduction. We're just talking about a flying saucer parked over the house for 10 minutes. I couldn't make that connection. And he said to me,
they've taken you too.
And I said, Sean, no, I've never been abducted. And at this point, I had a different reaction. I was scared because I thought Sean was a little bit crazy. I thought, and that scared me. We have friends whose lives were completely ruined by schizophrenia and all that. So I thought that's just crazy. And that scared me because Sean is the rock. He's the cop. He's the one you turn to when you need somebody to take down these Russian gangs of ATM thieves that run off into the woods. He is the tough cop, and he's rational, and he's smart, and he's prepared. So it scared me. I thought, oh no. And he said, yeah, they've taken you. And he said, don't you remember the time when Mom screamed and said, they're back? Why do they always come back?
Why do they have to come back?
Yep. Why do they always have to come back? It was three. I finished the sentence when he started it. And holy, it was, do you ever see like a horror movie where the main character sees something incredibly weird and the camera cuts to him and it like zooms and reality kind of, it's a dolly shot, you know, it's where they push him on a dolly. And so the background moves. That was what it was, a dolly shot. It was, we're in this car going on the highway. It was as if somebody standing on the side of the road lobbed a bowling ball and it went through the windshield and it hit me right in the head and blew my mind. Excuse my language. And in that moment, it broke loose all these memories. All at once, cascading. It was like the block. I did remember that. And not only did I remember what she screamed, I remember everything that happened after that. They were taking the whole family, and all of it was right laid out in front of me. It was.
And I have no doubt that had I been allowed to just drift back off to sleep, and I had woken up at some point afterward, I never would have remembered it. I think it's only because I never really got back to sleep like they wanted me to get. And he woke me up straight up saying he saw the UFO outside, and I'm putting it together in my head as I'm running up the stairs. I'm like, yeah, this just happened.
So this is the first time you've had memory recall yourself?
At that age, yes, absolutely.
So, man, I don't. If there's
and
more,
my mother as well. It broke the hold that they had over us for so long. We were confronted with the reality of the situation, and for the first time in my life and my mother's life, we were dealing with an alien ship without being abducted, without being deep under their telepathic control, and that was it. And it was a confluence of errors. If Mom didn't force me to look past the newspaper, that I'm completely confident they had me hold up.
Even if they had just approached from a different direction, they seem to come from the south sometimes. I've noticed that, and leave towards the south on certain times. But this time towards the east,
southeast.
But had they approached where the roof of our house blocked their vision, or maybe even from the north, they might not have even seen the craft.
And I wouldn't have seen it. I wouldn't have gone and prevented Sean from getting back to sleep, which clearly has something to do with the way they recall your memory, the way they cover your memories.
Although there are times where they bring you back and you're awake when you're back and you still don't remember. So, you don't have to go to sleep to forget it.
It's true.
So I don't know. Maybe it was just the fact that instantaneously I'm confronted with, hey, there's a UFO outside. Wait a second. They were just in here. I had a conversation with them too. They didn't just bring me in. The one who, didn't want to talk at all. He didn't want to alert me.
They must have known we were witnessing this on the outside. And they clearly used the flare thing to cover bringing Sean back, whether it was...
Yeah, they didn't see us like float through the air or anything, which we've done going and coming before. I believe that they teleported us directly into the basement. And it's not the only time I was teleported.
So, with that, is it possible that the teleportation, how do I say this? Like, could it be that the commute from the craft to the house, or the house to the craft being teleported, looks the same, but at times you don't remember the actual trip every time? Does that make sense? Like, because if you remember actually being taken into the craft kind of thing, but then there's other times that it's more of a teleportation. could that be a lack
there's
of?
only, I don't remember every time. Sometimes I only remember either coming or going. So I don't have the whole incident, from start to finish. I don't have any of those memories.
But you were on the craft looking at the pool with your arm over each of the shoulders. In the next instant, he was in the bedroom. And
And you said that
situation where they couldn't. What's that?
I was just going to confirm, Sean, you said that when you were in the craft, you were very lucid, right? And it was the transition from the craft to the basement that made you so groggy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And I don't know what caused that, whether it was the teleportation or it was something they gave me or mind control. I have no idea.
But lucid is a sliding scale. They never have you lucid on the ship because you would scream, you would flee, you would fight, you would pick something up. Instead, he's just talking to them. So he's alert in one sense, but not like fully alert. Never let me near them.
I felt comfortable where I was. I was not in the least bit shocked when I saw the alien. I wasn't shocked to be hovering above the backyard. It felt normal. All I wanted to do was join my family by the pool because it looked like a lot of fun. So I asked and started the conversation.
And so are we, or maybe I'm hearing it wrong, but are we all on the same page then that what you and your family saw was more of them bringing him back and not taking him?
Yes. Oh yeah, no. When they took him, I don't know when. He's home 9 or 10 in the morning, goes to sleep, something like that. I was at my apartment, which was less than a mile away. And then I went to work at 10 o'clock in the morning at the racetrack to direct traffic and crowd control and all that sort of thing. And then I had gotten out at 6. So yeah, we were not involved when they took him.
It's kind of the opposite of the Travis Walton case. They saw him being taken. They didn't literally see him go into the craft by any means, but they saw the craft and him knocked out, and then they return and he's gone. This is the opposite. They're witnessing my return. They all thought I was downstairs asleep because I had been downstairs asleep.
So when you were looking out, however you were looking out this craft, I mean, there's got to be some kind of translucent field or something. You, as far as you can remember, you weren't expecting to be in your basement at that moment, right? Like Chris was expecting you to be in the basement. You weren't.
No, I didn't feel out of place at all. But I still have no memory of anything that happened before it.
Gotcha.
Maybe I did at the moment, but since I woke up, I certainly don't remember anything before seeing everybody at the pool looking down in the backyard on that incident.
It's very often you remember the heads and tails of abduction experiences. And this was the tail for him. You don't really often remember the middle because, one, they like you to be ambulatory. They don't want to carry you or drag you or anything like that. So they just put you under control and you follow them. You do exactly what they say. Can you get up on the table by yourself? Sure. Okay. And also, as I say, that when they do when they do come to you and you freak out, they go, wait, you remember me? And in that instant, you do remember them, and you remember all of the things you've done together. And the way they do it, you remember me? And at the same time, they're changing your mind. So you're not screaming at monsters. You're like, oh yeah, of course I remember. How could I forget you? Of course I remember, man. Sorry, how could I forget you? And they say something like, don't worry about it. It's okay. We get it. Instead of saying, you don't remember me because we control your minds and your memories, they kind of let you out there and take the blame for not remembering them. They're very duplicitous at the very least. They're like, yeah. And then in that moment, you remember everything. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, so they don't have to answer the same questions every single time. And two, so you're up to speed on the protocol. You know what to expect. You know what they're going to have you do. what the ships are like, and you actually know the individuals that have come for you. I think they give you, quite often it's been the same ones with me throughout the years they were taking me. It's like that's the teams assigned to you or something like that.
So with 96, Chris, you were out in the yard, and you at first you're not taking the newspaper down. At one point you mentioned how your mom and somebody's girlfriend, I think, somebody else that was there, it was almost like they were in a trance, just staring at it.
Yeah.
But you also recall that this was a moment that your mom started to remember things too. So
not in the exact moment while she was standing there.
Right, but was she actually?
I later forced the conversation on everybody. There it was, the elephant in the room. There's a UFO in the backyard, and I might as well tell everybody what's been going on.
The thing we've avoided since 1959, we couldn't pretend anymore. We couldn't ignore it, and it was all their hold. And apparently, that hold is not as strong always. I mean, they were up against it. They were dealing with, they were in an awful situation. They were turning a guy with witnesses in the backyard. How are they going to do that? I'm sure those two Greys got in a lot of trouble. I bet they did, because they blew their gig with us. It blew their game up.
It makes you wonder, like, if they have this ability, why is it that they make a scheduling error, essentially?
You tell me.
Yeah, they're capable of errors. I've seen it before, but I do question myself. What if Chris did open that door? Well, they've been able to mind control him before. Couldn't they have just, done whatever they had to do with him and then, be as comfortable leaving? I don't know why there was such a panic in the one. Some things I don't get.
By the way, I take great pride in being the man who scared the aliens. That's going to be on my tombstone, right?
I've never heard an alien being scared before.
Yeah, they're not perfect. It seems foolish. Why would they do this? I don't know. I mean, they're not gods. You know what they are? They're halfway between gods and that's what they are. They are like gods. They have these enormous abilities, but they can be stupid in some ways. Not often, but they can misjudge what a kid is capable of doing and performing. So I don't know. I mean, they do a pretty good job, and I just
and they can disagree. They can disagree on how to do things, and if one of them makes a mistake, they can catch hell for it from the taller Gray.
There is a lot of talk going around that causes us to bristle. Suddenly, in the past few years, it's been, oh, well, they're just like robots. They're biological robots. And my labs make them in a factory in Trenton, New Jersey, and the bodies are stacked up on the floor until they need them to go to the. These are not robots. They're as alive and individual as you or me. In fact, they're considerably more alive than I am. The things they do and the things they're capable of. And they have an emotional range. The way the telepathy goes in your head, if it's something they're feeling strongly about, you feel their emotions. Like Sean felt the one was scared. Normally their emotions range from, angry to perturbed. They can be bored. They're very bored. Because to them, these abductions are like a day at work. They've done it. It's like going to a dentist's office. They take you, they put you in the chair, you wait here till it's your turn, we'll do this, and then we'll get you out of here. And, but their personalities are so distinct. Some of them can be kind. They can be kind, very kind, and try and engage you in a little bit of conversation that they shouldn't. And others can be angry and cruel, downright cruel. They're a lot like people. And the way, when we talk about what they're saying in our head, and he's like, we're going to get caught. That's the way they speak. That's the way we hear them, is in a conversational English, like anyone who would speak to you. It's not a stilted, robotic, oh no, the human is approaching. We must change our objectives. They're not Daleks. They're not Borg. And their minds are all linked pretty much. I mean, at least the group that's with you. And at least one of them is in contact with higher ups further away. It's like they're saying we got to step it up or something like that. They're all in each other's heads. And so they all know what the other one's talking about. And there were a couple of times for each of us where they told us something they shouldn't. Because if you think these grays are good, they're not. They act in absolute secrecy. Absolute. And that includes not telling you, the abductee, a darn thing about who they are, what they're doing. They don't tell you because they're up to no good.
It's a hostage situation. Like somebody who's doing a kidnapping, piracy. Like you're not telling the people you have hostage what your goal and plan is. It's irrelevant to them.
There is a kind of sickness in this UFO field, and people don't even know they're doing it. They're alien apologists. They're like, oh, well, they probably didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know that, kidnapping your children and performing medical procedures and breeding them is wrong. They just don't know.
Yeah.
I call BS because they're inside your mind. They're fully inside your mind and understand everything you feel and think. So they know that we consider this to be wrong. The crimes of the flying saucers, let me tell you, one abduction, if you did it, you would never see the light of day again. You'd be in prison for the rest of your life. Let's start with home invasion. Home invasion that's breaking in while people are in there. That can get you 20 years to life, depending on the harm that's brought to the people inside. You add to that, like you say, kidnapping
Of a child specifically, but they do adults too.
How about forced medical procedures? How about forcing people to reproduce against their will, extract embryos, eggs, sperm, to make hybrid beings against your will? And these offspring that are half yours are their property. They can make as many as they want. They'll take you again if they want more. People think that they're our friends, they're our cosmic brothers. They're just testing us, and they just want to figure out what we're like with these abductions. They just can't figure it out. No, they know exactly how we work, and they're exploiting us like any other resource.
Mm-hmm.
We are a resource to them. Here's how little aliens think of humans. They don't think you have the right to just be left alone. They don't think you have the right to stay home. They don't think you have the right to control your own mind, your own attitude. If they don't like what you're thinking, they will paralyze you where you stand, and then they will turn your mind around to do exactly what they want, to make you complacent and compliant. And that's how little they think of us, that we don't have any autonomy and we don't deserve it.
I feel like it's not even, so I think you guys and I probably disagree on some things, but this stuff we do. I feel like I get a sense that I might be a little bit more on the wooey side, but not on the let's summon them with CE5 side either. But like when it comes to this, I mean, I feel like it's not even, they don't think we have the right. I feel like I think there's a disdain towards humanity that it's not even that it's like, oh, we don't think you deserve this. It's like, no, we hate you for having this, and we're going to violate your human rights. And if you guys said you've listened to the show before, I mean, like I come from a Christian perspective, and so when I say wooey, I mean like you're talking about the hybrid stuff. I'm on board with 100%. I feel like a lot of this stuff is people define things differently, and when when you guys or other people are being taken, I get this feeling that, and it's like as somebody who doesn't recall being abducted, and I don't know if I ever was. I just talked to a lot of people. There's this whole thing where it's like interdimensional, like they're transcending some kind of dimension. Like even when you were talking about how it looked like it was like a heat mirage, and then it became more clear. My thought was, do you feel like it could have been materializing into this physical existence from another dimensional plane?
I'm convinced they're interdimensional, and I'm convinced I watched them come into this dimension. The only two choices are interdimensional or cloaking device. But it sure as hell didn't look like a cloaking device, because it took a long time to form and to become solid enough to be in our world, to reflect the sun, and to cast a shadow underneath it.
Yeah.
And it was a broad daylight, blue sky. And I sat there as an observer, and I tried to memorize every instant of the changes it went through. I'm convinced they're interdimensional. Yeah, they didn't come like, that's what I kind of chuckle at this. Oh, there's a ship coming in 2027. They're getting here. Really? How are they coming? By Greyhound bus? Because I've seen them. They just show up. It's like, how much further? Well, we're coming up on Jupiter, you know?
I mean, you guys are talking about being teleported. I mean, like, it's kind of instantaneous.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know exactly how they work, but
sure.
Yeah, the things that we've experienced, levitation, being passed through solid walls and solid.
You personally
doors.
have been passed through solid walls.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, Sean, one of the first times they took him, they levitated him on bed, right?
What happened was I noticed there's beings in my room. It's dark. I'm like,
how old?
Young. I couldn't say
5-ish?
5, 6.
Because we were at 17
like that.
that.
Yep. And I'm like, this can't be real, but I think there's somebody in here. So I got myself underneath my blanket and held it as tight as I could and just waited to see what was going to happen. And sure enough, I felt a tugging on the blanket, which scared the shit out of me, because this is real. There's somebody there tugging my blanket. But B, it gave me a little bit of relief that I can hold this blanket. They're not getting me, you know. And as soon as I had the thought of my foot, I could feel somebody grab my ankle and yank me out of the bed the other direction. And I was levitating out of the bed, except my right foot or my right leg still felt heavy, and it kept dropping towards the floor. And one of the tall aliens, he leaned forward towards my head and he just said, "Relax." And as soon as he said, "Relax," my leg lifted right up. I felt no weight. And then I was floated through the wall, feet first upward towards the craft. And I remember looking down at the side of my house and the roof and saying to myself, they're not even going to know what happened to me. I thought this was the end for me, and my parents wouldn't even know where I was when they got up in the morning. So
yeah,
you were upside down.
Yeah.
Looking down at the house and the chimney as you're sucked up into this craft.
So do the crafts?
I don't know what we really disagree on.
Well, no, I said so that no, that's actually great and clarifying too. Well, I mean, so for instance, maybe disagrees the wrong word, but like defining things. Like I think a lot of this action coming from a theological perspective for me is happening in the second heaven. I don't know if you guys know much about that, but just scripturally speaking, it says that Paul said that he was once taken to the third heaven where God resides. And then theologically, over the centuries, people have been like, well, what's the first and second heaven? And the idea has been that the first heaven is this physical plane of existence that we live in, second heaven lying in the middle ground between the two. And I feel like that's where a lot of the shenanigans are happening. And, you know, the whole idea of going through walls and the interdimensional aspects of things, I think, wind up taking place there. And even with what you were saying earlier about them making mistakes and having almost like these disagreements and stuff. That's something that I've come across, not just in abduction stories and scenarios that people recall, but even along the lines of dealing with, entities and because I mean, so this is so interesting. I'm really glad we're going here. It's interesting how people who are like yourselves being abducted and taken places, there are people who are not saying that they're being abducted by aliens, but they're still being taken by entities to another realm, to another place. And so it makes me, as somebody who sits back and takes stories, wonder, where's the connector here? Is there a connector here? Because these sound similar, but the subject matter is different. And so
you mentioned about like astral abductions.
Sometimes, but like I've talked to people who have a very similar, not like story as you guys, but in the sense of like experience where I was taken, but it wasn't by graze. It was this entity, or sometimes the entity appears before them as like almost like a dark human type entity, demonic. And I've had people talk about where they were recruited by something to work for it in a lucid dream. So however you want to take the dream aspect, but it's in some situations, not every situation, but some of the situations, one particular that the audience is very familiar with. If you ever want to listen to it, it's episode 692. It progressed to the point where this person was not just being taken in this like lucid dream state, but it was actually a physical thing that it progressed to. But not one time in that story did the idea of ET alien come up. It's like a totally different storyline, but there are similar actions, if that makes any sense.
There's a lot of things going on out there. And far be it from us to question other people's experiences. But we know our corner of this situation. And these, and it's not just one type. I mean, there's the short grays, there are the tall grays. They're very hierarchical. They're like a military rank. They're not all about equality. And the ones above them, the tall grays, are the mantis. And I have encountered mantis.
I haven't.
And
that I recall.
They're no. It was,
you hear that, Chris?
One episode.
Sean doesn't believe you.
No, I do.
I'm kidding.
And they threatened to kill my dog. Okay. The mantis threatened to kill my dog if I ever told anyone about him. It was pure abuser language. Threatening a kid to. What happened is two tall grays were walking me out because we're on a bigger ship, and then they're taking you back to the smaller craft to take you back. We're walking down the hallway, and I look to, and I'm zoned out. I'm just following them. I'm kind of I'm ambulatory. I'm kind of awake. And I looked to my left against the wall, and there was a door open that was closing. And I looked in, and I saw this creature like a very old and brittle grasshopper or praying mantis with the arms like this, with the serrated things. And there were two tall grays were helping it move to like a chair, like a throne almost. It was wearing purple robes, flowing purple robes. And it was brittle and it was dry. And I just saw it, and the door's fully closed, and we keep walking, and then the voice booms. And to me and to the two tall grays, bring him back here. He saw me. And the one gray goes, oh, no, he didn't see anything. We got him under. We got to get him back. The schedule's really tight. And he said, the mantis said, he saw me. I saw through his eyes. He saw me. Bring him back here. And the two tall grays, they were trying to cover for me, trying to get me out of there. Well, they got to bring me back. So the one leaned to me. Usually if there's two tall grays, one does all the talking. The other does a lot of, nodding. And he said to me, don't say a word. Do not speak. Do not say anything. Okay. And they bring me back and into the room. with the two tall grays and this crusty, dry insect thing in a purple robe, and the two grays that were with me. And the mantis said, "Put him on his knees." And I thought, they're keeping me calm, but I thought, is this a Roman movie? What an abusive thing to say. Put me on my knees. And the grays, "Get on your knees." I'm on my knees, and the mantis starts looking at me and saying, and again, telepathically, "You didn't see me. You never tell anyone you saw me. Do you understand? If you tell anyone ever that you saw me, I will kill your parents." "No," he said, "I'll kill your dog." "What's your dog's name?" And he reached into my mind telepathically, but it was very, very different than the Gray's telepathy. It was painful. It was like he was pulling strings out of my eyes, like dental floss, just pulling it out to get it what he wanted. And he said, "Poochie, your dog's name is Poochie. If you ever tell anyone you saw me, I will kill Poochie. Get him out of here." And the Grays, "Okay, yeah, he's got it." And as soon as we got out the door, the Grays had me run to the shuttle to get out of there. Like, "Let's go. Hurry up, let's go." In case he changes his mind, brings me back. "Well, you know what, you crusty bug? Do your worst. My parents are dead. Poochie is dead. So I'm going to tell everybody who will listen about you." Anyway, so yeah.
Do you get the sense that there is, because you mentioned about the Greys, and I think you said that there were other Greys helping the mantis walk or sit down. Do you think that, like, obviously there's this hierarchy then?
Yes.
And maybe you guys have experienced this along the way, I don't know, but do you ever get the sense that there's almost like an egotistical war amongst these beings, where it's like there's jockeying for position as far as, like, trying to prove who's more, I don't know, better? Just
No.
have you ever?
No, they all know their place. They all know their
Okay.
rank. The short Grays, they're terrified of screwing up, right?
Yeah, they don't want to anger the tall Gray. It's like having a boss that is a real whip cracker. He's not a guy you want to work for.
And then they were subservient to the mantis on that occasion. It's very rigidly hierarchical, but they're one unit. They're one thing. And one time I did, and I don't even like to mention it because I don't buy into a lot of what they say about reptilians, but at one large event where they took my whole family, and we get to this facility, and it's huge. And there were hundreds of abductees at once. It's almost as if they did a drill, like a fire drill. And so many, and there were two, I guess they were reptilian beings. And it was underground. The walls were raw rock, but the floors were all smooth as polished marble, just like an office building. They would slope and curve. The Greys are not into right angles. They're not into it. There's no right angles in their ships and in this facility. It was anything. It was like a smoothed out skateboard park where there were slight bumps and curves. And in the middle was a little stream trickling by, and a little footbridge, like from a 1970s mall, In the center of the mall, they had a water feature and a little bridge you could walk across. And there were two, I got to call them reptilian beings, standing there, tall, menacing, like security. And I'll tell you this, they were like a blackish green. They were very dark green, black, brown. In their teeth, they had teeth that looked like golf tees, long, thin to a point, and they were kind of snaggly, and they had tails. They had tails. They had open like a toga thing, and they were carrying something, but I didn't get to see them for more than a few seconds solidly, because we get into that facility and they start taking my mother and my brothers this way. I see them across the crowd of people like it was a train station. And I'm like, I go with them to catch up with them. They're like, no, he's like, I got to go there. This is my family. I go with them. They go, no. You're over here. You're in this line. Get in here. And they put me in a line and they paralyzed me where I stood, so I didn't cause any more trouble, to the point where you can't turn your head around. And they were right over here, these reptilians. And I'm paralyzed, and I'm seeing all these people in a trance. I'm seeing a really heavy set woman in her underwear across from me. And she's just staring out. And I was still a kid. I was like 10. I had never seen a woman like that. Like, she had a bra and panties on, but I was embarrassed. And I was embarrassed for her. But she was in a trance, and I'm looking at the people. That's all I can do. And all of a sudden, from behind me, like 3 people behind me, a guy starts to moan. He's like, oh, ah, ah, ah. And he says, wait a minute. This is not a dream. This isn't a dream. This is really happening. Oh my God. He's calling out to God. He's screaming, help me, help me. And the 2 reptilians are chuckling. And a tall gray swoops over to him, and the 2 reptilians, and they get this guy out of line, and they carry him off that way to some branching off room or corridor I couldn't turn to see before he, wakes up the herd. That was the only time I saw reptilians, and I really didn't get to stare, and maybe that's a good thing.
So when you saw it, those reptilians, what was going on around you, was that a unique situation as well, or was that something you were familiar with? It's just the reptilians were something that was a new equation to what you were experiencing.
No, I didn't. They had come for us at like 11 o'clock in the morning, and that's rare. Most abductions are like 8 to 10, 11. They're not middle of the night usually. They're evening abductions. But Sean was taken out of the car with my parents at about 9 o'clock. And there were several, and this one was daylight when they were returning Sean in 96. And this one where they took us was daylight. And I have never remembered another event that was that big involving that many abductees. Or I've never remembered a facility like that I'm convinced was underground, just by the rock walls, untreated rock walls all around us.
Okay, so you're saying that what you experienced there, you believe was on Earth underground?
I can't say. I really can't. Because...
But he did have that impression, I guess.
Yeah, I had that impression. It was a stream. Was it the moon? I mean, could be. Could have. But it didn't seem like it. And there was another thing that made me think that, okay?
Uh-huh.
Then I'll do it really quickly.
Very fun.
They were taking us in a smaller craft. Mom and Sean were out of it. They were in a trance. Sean was only 3 or 4. But they took him anyway. And we're on the shuttlecraft, and it starts to lift up. And I'm thinking, I'm curious, and I'm kind of away. And I said, I slip out of the chair. They had put me in. It had a bar here, like in a roller coaster, where you wouldn't fall forward now. But I slipped out, and I started to come over. I wanted to look out the window and see what the city looked like from above. And one of the 2 quote unquote pilots, short grays, one of them whipped around and said, "This one is up. What's he doing up?" And another one comes over and puts me back and sets me in my chair. And they're like, when we put you somewhere, you have to stay there for your own safety. You understand? I'm like, okay. And the nice one who didn't yell at me turns and goes, what were you trying to do anyway? Like I was sneaking right up on them, what were you trying to do? And I said, I've never been in a plane. I wanted to see what the city looks like from above. And he goes, oh, all right. Well, we don't go up. He said, well, we go up a little bit, but then we go down. And when he said that to me, the mean one said, shut up. And that's the words, I heard, shut up. What are you doing? You don't tell them that. You don't tell them anything. And the nice one said, come on. The kid's curious. That's a good thing, right? Besides, he's not going to remember anything. And the other one's like, well, just don't. So that always stuck with me. I did remember it. There are things you do remember. And usually there are moments when there's conflict or something unusual like this. So when he told me, I thought about it for a long time. We don't go up, we go down. And then suddenly on another abduction, there we are with like cave rock walls and ceilings.
I got to tell you, man. So one, I think everybody's connecting dots when you're saying that, like the idea of USOs and, them going down in the water and all. But what I was talking about earlier to you fits this description as well. So often I've talked to, it's got to be close to a dozen people now that have had a similar experience to what I'm about to say to you.
Okay.
But there are people who talk about being in cave systems, tunnel systems during these experiences that they're having. And they're not telling me anything about grays. They're just talking about, I found myself walking through this cave system. And another thing that stuck out to me earlier, I'm just going to bring up, and some of this stuff is not going to make any sense to you unless you listen to episode 692. But you mentioned about the mantis and how they were sitting him down into a chair, and then you used the word possibly thrown.
I got that vibe.
So I have at least twice now, that very word thrown or throne room was used during the experiences that I'm talking to you about. And so that's what I mean. Like it seems like there's these parallels, but we're talking about different subjects. And that's what's like really kind of making my gears turn right now. It's just like, where are these things connected? Because like what you're talking about, what spawned this whole story you just shared is seeing all the other people. Like this sounds like a human trafficking operation. Like that's what this sounds like. This sounds like that they are abducting. I mean, first of all, we agree, abducting people, not good, right? Yes. It just seems like this isn't just a one-off where somebody kidnaps somebody else. This is an organized human trafficking situation that is happening amongst these things.
If you ask me, listen, I don't like to speculate. I don't like to get over my skis, and neither does Sean. We like to speak about what we know. And the only way you can judge them is by what they do and what they say. And I know this is to create hybrids because they introduced me to a hybrid son of mine. And not for my benefit, but for the child's benefit. And it was very interesting. It was only the one time. Sean has been introduced to what he believes were some hybrid children as well. Right?
Yeah, nobody used the term hybrid. No. I didn't know I was still relatively young.
We didn't even know they were aliens.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much later. And Sean, they like Sean. Sean's experience and mine are vastly different. There's 7 years between us. But Sean has got what they want. He's, first of all, very early on, Sean worked out a deal with them as a young child, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's for me, the worst part of the abduction experience was being paralyzed. It's a horrific experience. Wouldn't wish it on anybody. And so I told them that. I asked them if they could not paralyze me. And they agreed to not
You
paralyze
just
me.
use paralyze.
No, that's right. I was a child, so I used the word freeze. Like freeze tag. That's the way a kid would describe it, and that's what I did. I said, I don't like to be frozen. You should not freeze me. And they agreed to not do it so long as I did what they asked me to do or told me to do. So
Then he told you, we'll give it a try.
no, he just said,
Yeah.
he just said, as long as you do what you're told. So from that point on, I wasn't paralyzed until recently.
Yeah, until 2023.
Yeah.
Probably because we're making a lot of noise and they're not thrilled about it. But yeah,
I don't know, but they did. Yeah.
yeah. But so they liked Sean. And I think maybe there is something about the act of the paralysis and this heavy sedation that they didn't use on him that allowed him to retain an awful lot of more clear memories. I have a bunch, but Sean has more. And they taught Sean how to perform acts of telekinesis, right?
Yeah.
I'm a little, I don't envy anybody in this scene. I'm not jealous of anybody. They never did that with me. Sean had,
It sounds like you're a little jealous.
I am a little. I'm letting it out here right now. This is my confession. On Confessionals,
Yeah.
I am jealous that my brother got to do superpower stuff with telekinesis, and meanwhile they're telling me sit there,
Get on your knees.
Right. So what did they tell him?
If you want to hear that, yeah, sure. I was with two aliens and another human who I know but won't name.
Wait, you know the other human, but you won't name it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I know who it is, but I won't out them.
Is it somebody that people would know, or is it just somebody that you know personally?
No, somebody I know that has not given me consent to use
Gotcha.
the name.
Do they acknowledge that you saw them?
They didn't deny it.
Okay.
They didn't deny it. I was actually taken with this person. And so it's him and I, and behind each of us is a taller gray alien. And what they have in front of us is kind of like a shelf system. And on that are these longer rods. And on each end of them, they had what I described as fire on each end of it. But it may, looking back as an adult, it may have been some sort of like taser type device, an electric charge, which makes more sense. And they had them levitating in the air off of the rack and spinning around like a wheel, like this, like a single spoke going around. I had no idea what they wanted us to do. And it's spinning around in front of me. And after a few minutes, it kind of turns on its side and comes at me and hits me in the side of the head where the charge was, and it hurt my ear. So I asked the other person there, how do you do it? Because they had it still spinning in front of them. And without a word spoken back, the alien who was behind me touches me on the very top of my head, and I can feel an electric charge, like a direct charge about the size of a tiny straw, narrow straw, going right down to the center of my brain. And all of a sudden, that part of my brain, I don't know if they activated it. It felt like it was turned on for the first time in my life. I could literally feel it. It felt like it was moving. And because of it, all of a sudden, I could move this thing around the room with ease. I was spinning it around like a boomerang and spinning it around the entire room. And after a moment, they stopped it in midair. And the one behind me got a little excited and said, I've never seen anything like it. So the one And I could feel like he was thinking to the other one, like, this is what we've been doing this for the whole time. And the other one behind the other person turns to him and says, I know, like he's agreeing with them, but I can also feel him telling him to calm down. And that's all I remember of that specific incident.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So it seems like with this story and this experience that you had, it kind of really connects this dot that it's not an isolated situation either, unless maybe. I mean, like, because I don't know who it was and stuff, but I'm just under the assumption that it wasn't your mom or somebody in your family. Like, you know, it feels like there's more. I hate to even say it like this, but I feel like there's more people that are going through this than what what realize it. Because I mean,
Chris likes to say these aliens have been in more homes than the Property Brothers. People just don't know it.
Gotcha.
If we didn't have that incident in '96, we'd have no idea that they've been coming in and out of our house for the last what's it been, 60 plus years?
60 for me next year. Yeah. They just walk into your house. They walk into your house like they own it, and then they walk you out like they own you, because they pretty much do. And they do whatever they want with you. Sean has had these other things. He had another thing where he had to turn a box inside out. They were all watching him through a window, see if he could do it.
What, like telepathically?
Yeah. Well, they don't like to explain what they want you to do. They don't even tell you what they want you to do, let alone how to do it. So they put me into a room, and I don't remember anybody saying these words, but I was under the impression they're not going to let me out until I figure this out. And I was in no real hurry. I walked in, I remember taking my time and looking around, and it was well lit, which is unusual for the ships. Like, there was light coming from the ceiling, there was light coming off the floor, and there was light coming from the walls. And I took a moment to look around. I even had to peer around the corner into like a smaller area. I don't remember what was in there. But then there was a table with a box on it. And somehow I knew that they wanted me to, before I even got there, they got me into the room. There's a small window in the door, and they're all kind of like jockeying for position to look inside look through the window, and to watch me. And one saying, "Is he going to do it?" The other one says, "Can he do it?" And the third one says, "He'll do it," real confidently. And I looked over, saw a table, it had a box on it. And somehow I knew that I'm supposed to turn the box inside out using my mind. And I'm standing there for a moment. I'm trying to think, well, how am I going to do this? I'm trying to think, where can I fold it inside out? And then eventually I just realized what you do is you simply reverse the actual side. You don't twist it or turn it at all. You just take the inside of the top of the box and change the molecules around so that the colors change on the actual surface. So you're just moving the top of the side to the bottom of the side and the bottom to the top, kind of morphing into each other, past each other. So now the dark side is on the top instead of the light. And you just do it on all the sides, and all of a sudden the box is inside out. I don't really know how it worked. I just did it.
Yeah.
Above my pay grade. They never had me doing a lot of that kind of thing, but they liked Sean. They had a very good relationship with him, and they showed him how to do things.
Yeah, and they did take me to a school. It was like an old-fashioned schoolhouse, kind of like you see on the show Little House on the Prairie. It's probably, before your time.
No, like a one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah,
I remember Little House on the Prairie, man. Come on.
It was exactly like that. And it's in the middle of the woods. And it's great big tall trees there. And I was thinking to myself, boy, it seems kind of bright for such tall trees. You'd think it'd be blocking more of the sun's light. And I remember we went into it. I was with just one alien, and we went into the side door, and there were a whole bunch of kids in the room sitting at desks, just like a classroom. And they were quite unruly, like a classroom that's got a substitute teacher for the day. Kids are all just talking to each other loudly, a little bit, not doing anything wrong, but not paying attention either, not well behaved. And the one introduced me to the teacher, who I believe was a female. The only time I ever saw what I would say was a female alien. And I asked what it was. They told me it was school, and I was a kid, and I hated school. So I said, but I already go to school, in protest. And he just said, this is secret school. And so I had to stay and pay attention. And I don't really remember much that went on there, other than we moved the desks around to be in like a circle, to be facing each other. And I don't remember what was discussed beyond that.
You recall the sex of the alien? Do you recall male aliens mostly, or are they usually sexless?
Yeah, everything appeared to be like, no, I don't see any genitalia or anything like that.
You can tell they're,
but they talk and sound
more masculine.
Yeah,
I too only saw a female once, and it was when they introduced me to my hybrid kid. But you can just tell. And they did take, now that we're talking about it, they did take me to a classroom once too, but it was clearly on a bigger ship. I just kind of come to, I don't remember how I got there or whatever. And it's like a classroom with kids at tables and desks, white tables and desks. And there's the one wall is just a giant window. And we're in space because I'm looking at 1/4 of the Earth, just the lower quarter. Well, lower. That's all irrelevant in space, but I'm looking at 1/4. And I walk over to the window and I'm looking at it. And all the other kids were yelling and laughing and kind of throwing things and arguing loudly and petulantly with each other, like they were drunk. Like they were drunk. Every other kid in there. But I had walked over to the window and I'm looking at, and it was in shadow, most of it, what I could see, the quarter. And I'm trying to look and see, can I recognize a continent? Because I could see the way it was spinning. But it was a lot of clouds, and you could see brown, and then you could see ocean. I'm just looking at it, and there was one tall gray in this room. And he walks over and he's standing next to me. And this is one of the only times they had talked to me like an individual. And he said to me, what do you think? Or something like that, about looking at the Earth from this perspective. I said, it's wild. It's beautiful. Something like that. It's amazing. I think I might've said. And he said, let me show you something. And he had like a tablet in his hand, but it was just clear, and all of a sudden an image comes on it. And it was a cartoon, like just a cartoon of the Earth. And it splits in two. There's like explosions. And the Earth splits in two, like in a cartoonish way, one half this way, one half. And he said, this is why we're here. This is what we are trying to prevent. And I said some stupid thing like, oh, great. Or, you know what I mean? What am I saying to that? But I was more just enwrapped in understanding and listening to him. And that was one of the few times they spoke to me like a person. And I don't remember leaving that scene. In this instance, it's not the heads and tails I remember. It was that significant moment. And I believe he raised me up out of sedation to talk to me like that. So that's probably why I remember it better. Sedation to them, it's like a thermostat in your house. They can raise it, they can lower it with no effort. And the other instance was when they introduced me to a hybrid child. That, I think, was the most important, one of the big moments of my life. I don't have kids. And part of it is because I didn't want this to happen to kids. But anyway, if I could tell you about this, because
Please.
it reveals a good deal.
Please.
It really does. I was 16. It was 1979. I was like a sophomore in high school. Okay. So the Greys are walking me back from, wherever I was. If I was on a table and completely out or whatever they were doing to me. So they raise it up so I can walk with them. Walking with them. And they just, first of all, there's a lot of, I'll tell you this. Not everybody's going to tell you this. There is a heck of a lot of walking during an abduction. Bring your sneakers, because they walk from one part of the ship or installation to the other, and they walk it over here, and they move at a clip. You know what?
That's why they remain so thin. That's why they remain so thin.
Right. It's all the cardio they're getting. So they walk all over, and they're walking me to more. At first, there's all kinds of abductees. There's all kinds of Greys all around, milling about, going this way, going that way, like a hospital facility, People go in there, people go in there. But they start walking me to a more remote area where it's darker. And pretty soon we haven't seen anybody else for a while. And they raise me up on a sedation considerably more. Not make me fully alert, so I grab them by the throat and scream. And one of them turns to me and says, "We're in this remote part of the ship now. I see some dusty equipment. The top half of the room is not lit. The hallways are tightly curved, like with the center or something. And there's just one other hallway curving off of it into darkness." And the one Grey says to me, "Hey," just like that. Just like that. "Hey, you know what? We've got a few minutes before we have to get you back. We were wondering, would you do us a favor?" Just like that, like a friend buttering you up. They understand. They're so powerful, they're able to reach into your head and understand idiom and cliche and phrase and all kinds of language tricks to be so realistic. And I said, "Sure," not even knowing what it was. "What's the favor?" I said. "Well, somebody wants to meet you." And I said, "Oh, great. Bring him in. Who wants to meet me?" Because I'm thinking, nobody on earth wants to meet me. So, hey, great. Somebody wants to meet me. Bring him in. This is great. Let's meet. I said, who wants to meet me? And the one Grey who talks, there's two of them, one's like, He goes, "Well," and that's a word they use a lot. And they use it the way we use it. He goes, "Well, he's one that we made from you. And he's great. He's just great. We think he's so great. He's smart and he's funny. And I love that. I'm a comedian. And he's funny, and he lifts in his work group. He lifts everybody else up. He doesn't tear anybody down. And he makes the work fun for everybody. And we just really like him." And this is the closest I ever felt to them feeling love. They really liked this kid. And they said, "We always try to reward him. But every time we do, we ask him, what do you want? How can we reward you?" And he always asks the same thing. He says he wants to meet his Earth dad. It sounds like a bad Bill Cosby movie from the 1970s or something. Not my Earth dad, But that's the phrase they used in my head. And they said, we told him so many times, no, we don't do that. We can't do that. What else would you like? And he says, nothing. That's what I want. So this time we said yes. And since you agreed to it, which they would have made me agree to it either way, we're gonna let you in. It's just for a minute or two. All right. And I said, sure, not really comprehending. Within 30 seconds, we went from me being sedated and being brought home to being told I have offspring, one that actually wants to meet me.
And how old are you at that point?
I'm 16.
16. Does it matter if you've already gone through puberty or not, or can they reproduce with children?
Oh, well, I was having girlfriends at 16, man.
Well, I mean, like if they abducted you as like a 5-year-old, would they be able to use you to make clones?
I would doubt it, right?
Okay.
But if they took me at 11, it's a different story.
Sure.
And that's 5 years from where I was. It was the summer of 79, so I was getting close to another year older. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if they can. I would imagine not. Because I'm no doctor. I'm no endocrinologist. But this is what they wanted to do, and I was 17. And I said, okay. And they go, all right. Now listen, before we bring him out, he's not going to look like you. They're telling me. You're going to think he looks strange. You're going to think he looks weird. But you cannot think that. If he comes out and you think he looks odd or strange or weird, he is like us, and he is going to hear you. And he will be crushed. He will be devastated because he is really looking forward to meeting you. And if you think he looks weird, it's going to hurt him in a big way. They said, do you understand? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Don't think he looks weird. He goes, and they said, seriously, listen, we are going to be in there with you. And maybe not in the room, but in my head. They said, we're going to be in there with you trying to make sure you don't think he looks weird. But we can't do it just by ourselves. You have to not think he looks weird. Do you hear me? And I'm like, yeah. No. Are you listening? You got it? Is what he said. You got it? They were very serious. I'm like, I got it. Don't think he looks weird. Okay. And they go, okay. And they say, all right, bring him out. And just at that moment, a female one, like, I don't know, a nurse or his teacher, brings out this hybrid kid out of the shadows and right in front of me. And I'm looking at him, and I don't think he looks weird. Thanks to everybody's help in my head, I thought he was adorable. I thought he was so special. And I could feel his emotions coming off him. And he was beaming, so strong. We haven't spoken yet. Beaming these emotions, and it was love. It was fear. And it was nervousness. But it was mostly love. To them, we're animals. We're gorillas. We're dangerous, violent brutes. So they had probably given all these warnings about me, But then we got face to face with this kid, and 2 minutes ago, I didn't know I had a kid, and nobody told me what to say to him. And they're not letting me out of sedation to the point where I can really say what speak well to him. So I don't know what to say. So I'm ashamed to say I small talked him at first. I'm like, hey, how are you? And I'll tell you what he looked like. My impression of him was he looked like Charlie Brown. He had these short little legs, little torso and little arms, and a big round head. And on top of that, well, he was pink. He wasn't gray. And he was almost bald. He had a couple of hairs on the top of his head, and he had like Charlie Brown, he had this forelock of hair right here, but it was my color hair. And I thought he looked like me in a lot of ways. His eyes, his nose, they were all my mother's kind of features. And here's a little tiny detail. His eyes, big black iris, of course, or retina, but there was a ring of brown, the iris round, like my color. And just at the two corners were whites. So that there were whites to its eyes, just not as prevalent as ours. So he was really kind of halfway in between. So I said, hey, small talking. What am I saying to this kid? They say you're doing great in your school and everybody likes you. So, good for you. I think that's great. And the kid just looked at me and he pointed at my chest and he said, who are they? Are they family to you? And he was really asking, are they family to me too? Because I had 4 faces on my shirt. And I looked down and it was my favorite shirt at the time. It was a silkscreen print of the Beatles.
Hmm.
And there's the 4 Beatles faces in profile from like 1969. And I said, oh, no, they're not family. They're the Beatles. And I love them. They're musicians. Have you heard the Beatles? I said stupidly. And the kid looks a little confused. And I said, well, what kind of music do you listen to? And then I'm trying to find common ground. I'm like, I was big into comic books. Do you like comic books? Do you like movies? And the kid is kind of like wrinkling his forehead a little. He's confused. And at this point, they're moving in to break us apart. They don't like where this is going. I'm asking, and the kid is getting confused. The nurse moves in close to him, and my 2 grays are like over my shoulders, like we were 2 dogs that weren't getting along at the dog park, and they're ready to just separate them. And I know I've only got a second to say something to this kid that I'm trying to actually reach, say something that means something. And I said to him, what do you like to do in your spare time? What do you do for fun? And at that point, the aliens went, no, whoa, okay, this was great, so long. Get him out of here. You come this way. All right. And I can hear the kid's thoughts as he's saying to the teacher or nurse, what were those things he was talking about? What did he mean? And he was confused, and I could hear, as they're getting further away, the teacher saying, oh, we told you. They don't make any sense. They're animals. Just don't worry about it. And the Greys that were with me, they were furious with me. They liked this kid. They might even love this kid, but they were not happy. Well, you know what? You give me a little more heads up than a minute to think of what to say to a kid. And I was young and I was sedated. So I said to them, well, that went pretty good, right? And the one Gray said to me, yeah, great job. Completely sarcastically. Dave, I know the Grays are capable of sarcasm, because that's what he said. Yeah, great job. Just shaking his head. And I, for many years, and they never let me near him again. They never mentioned him and never let me near him. And for a lot of years, I got to tell you, I bore an enormous guilt that I had said the wrong things, that I had lost any chance at, I don't know, further contact with a kid that I could see was mine, despite his, Charles Schultz appearance. He was adorable and he was beautiful. And I blamed myself for years. But eventually, recently, I came to the I came to the conclusion that what I said to that kid was exactly what he needed to hear. What do you do for fun? What do you like to do for fun? What do you like to do in your spare time? Because I don't think they have spare time. I think they work these things. They're insect-like in their hive mind. They're not concerned with individuals doing things. They're concerned with the work. Get your work done. Do this. Learn, work. And I told him he should be having fun, that he should be allowed to have interests of his own and pursue them when he's not working, that he deserves that we all deserve interests and freedom to pursue them. I'm glad I said what I said. I hope it didn't get him in trouble, but it's what a kid needs to hear. Not congratulations on making your work quota and being a spectacular employee of the giant grasshopper corporation. You deserve fun. And I wish that for him. I don't know. It was 1979. I don't know if he's still alive. I don't know. I don't know how many they made for me, but they loved this kid, and they were disappointed in me, but too bad. I think I said the right things. Maybe I didn't, but I think so.
Yeah, the hybridization program is something that I find interesting. I mean, a lot of people have mentioned it before. Do either one of you recall when you're in these kind of situations, especially like it seems like and maybe I'm mishearing it, but there seems to be like a distinguishing environment that sometimes you're on a craft and sometimes you're not on a craft. Like for instance, the schoolhouse. I'm assuming that wasn't on a craft. Is that right?
I tend to think it was.
I don't know. I mean, it seemed like it was real woods to me, but who's to say?
You also said the lighting was all wrong.
Yeah, I was suspicious of the lighting for some reason. So I can't say for sure where I was. I don't know. Most of the time, go ahead.
They've had you do military exercises under an artificial night sky, correct?
Yeah, it seemed
a team of grays versus another team of grays. That you were helping one side.
Yeah, it seemed. Again, I don't know if it was real woods or not, but that seemed like it was a simulation of some sort. But I can't say for sure.
Apparently, they're ripping off the card years of Star Trek with whatever that room was where they went to with the holodeck.
Yeah.
So we don't know. I don't know. I know when I saw the Earth in that classroom, it seemed like it was on a ship because I'm looking at space and there's no other. It was so black, but the whole thing could have been a screen, a real, like a fancy screen like they have today, high def and everything. I was sedated, so it's possible. But I've only been here on Earth, at home or wherever they took me from, on a smaller ship to a bigger ship, on the ship, and then at one time at least to a what I think was an underground facility. They don't. I think that's all the locations. Often though, they'll come to your room and do what they have to do to get there. Especially as I got older, like 17, 18, they would come to my bedroom, the bedroom they returned him to, because I was still living at home, and he had a bedroom upstairs. And I'm like, all right, we going? And they're like, no, I think we can do this right here. And they just start doing things. I don't know what. You go under a little bit more, like measurements.
I remember a couple things they did in the bedroom to me, one of which was take a skin sample off my face here. And the other was put an implant up my right nostril.
They put an implant up my right nostril a couple years before he was born. Yeah.
Do you both feel like you still have those implants?
Well, as for me, I don't. because many years later, I was in a serious car accident. They did a lot of x-rays of my face and skull, and there was nothing there. But this was, as I say, about 68. And what happened was I was in my room, same room they usually take me out of, but I'm in my little chair, and there are three of them leaning over me. And I came to because the pain was so intense. That's the only time I've woken up during procedures. It's because the pain, they don't give you drugs. They just use their thing to, feel it. So that one time, and they're doing something up my nose, a couple of them. They go, he's up, he's awake. One of them comes around, got it, and they kind of sedate me a little more. And then they're done. And they said, they're walking out, and I'm like, this. And the last one turns to me and goes, oh, and don't try to get that out of there because you could kill yourself. I was 5, 6. And you're seriously telling a child not to put his finger in his nose? Is that, you think they often misjudge, what kids are capable of taking seriously. But the next morning, I wake up with a terrible nosebleed. And I call for my mom, Mom. And she pinches it, tilts my head back. She goes, this is so strange. Your father and I woke up with nosebleeds today. And I'm like, I know why. And then we shared the house with other relatives. My aunt had inherited it and let relatives move in and pay rent. And my uncle and my aunt, they came over for coffee with my parents a little while later, and they said, well, we woke up with nosebleeds today. Huh. And my mother, who probably knew better, said, well, it's so dry in here. We should get a humidifier. It's probably so dry. That's why we all 5 of us woke up with nosebleeds.
So so that whole situation then is basically marking that it's not just your mom and you guys, it's everybody in the family. It's just your mom remembers like you guys.
Yeah, well, we never really spoke to, but that uncle turned into a MAGA guy, and we just didn't talk to him anymore. He's still out there, but my dad campaigned for Robert Kennedy, and it was that month that Robert Kennedy was killed. My dad got to meet him 3 times working on his campaign. He came to Saratoga. He came to Glens Falls. He came to Skidmore College. So they were crushed, my parents. They were big Kennedy people. But anyway, we never talked to my uncle about that since, and it's been 50 years. We were in contact with him. We love him, and he's family. But yeah, on that day, I remember it was 5 of us in the building. In fact, all 5 of us. That was it, in that building, in that house at 156 Spring Street. A couple of years before the moon landing, which I watched, in that house. So yeah, I mean, I tend to think it means they did the same thing to everyone else as me on that occasion. But I don't like to guess, but that's exactly what it seemed.
You mentioned about the Earth that you were looking at, and you weren't sure if it was a screen or what, but you saw the Earth and it split, right? Almost like a cartoon.
Well, I
you
was
said,
looking
right?
at the Earth in reality through this window, the real Earth.
Uh-huh.
And then he came over to talk to me, the tall gray, and he lifted me out of sedation to really speak to me. And he says, here, look at this. He's like, it's beautiful, right? I'm like, yeah, beautiful. And he goes, come over here with me. And he had a little tablet, almost like a clipboard, but it was just clear plastic, same dimensions. And he goes, look at this. And when he held it, a little animation came on, like a Saturday morning, like a Schoolhouse Rock animation. And it was a picture of the Earth with a black background and a couple cartoon stars around it. And, a very American-centric picture of the Earth, North America, South America, what we recognize. And then the thing split at the equator with an explosion. There was no sound coming from the tablet. but there are explosion lines coming out and explosion clouds of red as the earth was split into two. And he said, this is why we're here. And I'm thinking, to do that? But he goes, this is why we're here, to prevent this from happening. That's why we're here. But, they lie.
Well, no, yeah, sure, but maybe I believe it because I find it interesting when you said that. I had to look it up because I knew I recognized it. In Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, chapter 24, verse 19 and 20, it says the earth. And this is a prophecy of the apocalypse of the destruction of the earth to then be rebuilt. It says the earth is utterly broken. The earth is split apart. The earth is violently shaken. The earth staggers like a drunken man. It sways like a hut. It transgress lies heavily upon it, and it falls and will not rise again. And I just thought the imagery that you used there, split, and this prophecy of the apocalypse, talking about the earth splitting, it's let's put it this way, it's interesting. And I'm not, and like I've already established, like I don't really, I don't find these grays and these guys as the good guys in this situation. They're kidnapping people, and so, and from my taking that, and then from my theological perspective, hey, I get it. You don't want the earth to be split because this is the playground you've been on for millennia. And you're trying to prevent this whole apocalyptic scene that's been prophesied about from happening. I find that interesting. Have you guys ever come across the whole idea of human hybrids with Genesis 6 and the Nephilim?
We're not a religious family.
Yeah,
my dad was raised in Catholic school, and they beat him brutally, physically, for asking questions.
Okay.
So my name was supposed to be Christian. And my dad said, there is no way that my kid is going to be named Christian. And my mom said, well, I don't like Christopher. So my name is just Chris.
Oh, so Chris isn't short for anything. It's just Chris.
It is just
It's
Chris.
Just compromise.
And my dad used to say, well, and my mother was more religious than that, and my dad used to say, in my household, we're only kind of religious. Like, we believe Jesus walked on the water, but we believe it was winter at the time, which would mean he's walking on ice.
Yeah.
That's what he used to joke. So I haven't really done that.
Let me just tell you, though, because I find it interesting, this hybrid stuff that you're talking about. These are things that, like I've talked about on the show for 8 years now. My fourth episode was about this thing called the Nephilim, and basically what this story is that there were
the Nephilim are the offspring of the seraphim who came down and took the wives of men. Right,
the fallen angels cohabitating and creating human hybrids, and it's just something that, like, it's just over and over and over again, something that's been talked about throughout human history. This hybrid concept being happening between human beings and this other species of beings.
Yes, and depending on which Bible version you're reading, the terminology is very different. And King James, I believe they're called these Nephilim, were the heroes of old. They were the men of renown, and the people have said that Charlemagne was towards the last of the Nephilim. I have a friend in France, and he says, do you know what percentage of the population of France is partially a descendant of Charlemagne? I'm like, I don't know, 17, 80%.
Whoa.
That's what I said. And he goes, there's articles on it now. But the hybridization, I mean, that's for a reason. And I think I'm much more nuts and bolts. These things are very territorial. They're like an ant colony or a beehive. They acquire territory. They acquire resources, and we are their main resource of interest. But the tall grays have said to me on a couple of occasions, very proudly, and this was their quote to me, Soon we will all live here together, and everyone will know his place. And I heard that over the course of years.
Mm.
And it's weird enough that we're all going to live here together. But when he says, and everyone will know his place, well, I know where our place is. And that is at the bottom of the ladder, the low man on the totem pole, where we're not even in control of our minds. You know, I bristle when people call us experiencers because that's the love and light crew. You know, that's the people in the desert summoning things. We were abducted, and we're not more of an experiencer than the Lindbergh baby. He was kidnapped. We were kidnapped. They show up in ships, they kidnap you, and they exploit your genetics to create beings that are them, that look like us, that can hide among us. They're at a point where hybrids look very human, passable. And I believe this is an invasion. They're taking this world. There's nothing that they've done that would to dissuade me from that. If they came to help, they certainly haven't fixed the environment. It's worse and worse. Overpopulation is worse. The seas are being farmed to extinction. And they've done nothing about it. What have they done? They've kidnapped a lot of toddlers. They've kidnapped a lot of kids and controlled their minds to do what they want, and a breeding program to create beings that are part us and mostly them can live here. And we're going to live here together, and we'll know our place, which is the only beings in the chain who don't have telepathic powers or control against them. When I said that I was looking for another word besides abductee or experiencer, and I thought about, well, how about unwilling employee, because they put you to work, or forced friend.
Slave.
And Sean said, what did you say?
A part-time slave.
Slave.
Yeah.
And at least slaves can know they're angry about what they're forced to do, but you're not. They make you do it and be happy for it. So that's what I see happening.
Mm.
And I don't think it's with these particular aliens. I think it started in the atomic age. If they're interdimensional, here I am going to speculate for a moment. It's very possible that our atomic detonations, which were more by a magnitude higher temperatures than the sun, might have affected other dimensions that we're connected to. So these beings come here and decide to put an end to that. And the interest they have in our nuclear facilities. They've turned missile silos off. They've turned them on and started launch sequences. They're always monitoring our Air Force and military bases. And so I think this hybridization program is relatively new, because if it's been going on for thousands of years, the kid they made for me would have looked a lot more human. This was about halfway through. Like he was first generation hybrid or second. So I think it started then. And that's when all these abductions started, in the post-war era, and they started flying over the White House in 1953. They were over at O'Hare Airport in 2006. I think this is very contemporary point of contact, where they're quickly, by their scale, moving forward with the beings that can control us, replace us, maybe to stop damage to their dimension. If I had to attach a benign motive or a positive one to what they do, but I think they're Columbus, and we are the Native Americans. That's what I think. And the real reason the government will never tell you, there's so many. I mean, what are they going to do? Get on and say, hey, aliens are kidnapping your kids and you and breeding you, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. It's a foolish move to disclose that. But the depressing thing about this is, if I'm right, and the way they treat us is through secrecy and power and control, is that the sad thing is we always think that space aliens are going to be better than us because they're smarter than us. and they'll be, here to help. But it looks like the rules that we have down here might be the same as the rules, up there. And that is that the strong take from the weak. They do what they want because they are strong. And they certainly regard us from a position of strength and ours being a position of weakness. And I think that is just the worst news that there could ever be. So, I hope I'm wrong. And they treated Sean pretty well. So, this is just my perspective.
Sean,
but they have told me they're going to live here and we'll know our place.
I want to, before we wind this down though,
Sure.
Several times throughout this conversation, Sean has mentioned about the most recent 2023 abduction that you went through, which was different in the sense that you were sedated or something like that?
I was paralyzed.
You're paralyzed. Could you tell us what happened?
Sure. It's certainly not the most interesting event, but I was in this current house that I'm in now, and I was just asleep, and I woke up and I couldn't move my right arm. I was trying to move my right arm and I couldn't. And then I tried moving my left arm and I couldn't. And I started to sit up and I couldn't sit up. And the first thing I thought was, oh my God, it's a medical event. I had a stroke or something like that. How long is it going to take somebody to come find me like this? And after a moment, I noticed like a light at the foot of the bed. And then I noticed two beings off to my right side, on each side, one off to the right, one off to the left. And it clicked to me that this was an alien abduction. And what I thought in my head was, oh, thank God, this is just an alien abduction, because I know they're going to bring me back. I'm going to be fine. I didn't suffer a medical event where I'm now paralyzed, because it was scary. That's the first thing I had on my mind was this is a medical event and I'm never going to be able to move properly again. It was terrifying. So I was relieved when I noticed there were aliens there.
It's kind of insane.
Talk
Thank
about
God this is just an alien abduction.
Yeah, talk about a warped life you guys have lived.
Yeah,
and it's, it was the first time they had paralyzed me since I had requested that they hadn't. That I remember, they can come and get you at any point, and I still probably wouldn't remember it.
When you hit our age and suddenly you're paralyzed, your thought is, uh-oh, stroke, right?
That's exactly what I thought.
Oh, it's just some craze. Yeah. Thank God. Good to see you guys.
I've been through this before. We can make this work.
No, woo.
Yeah.
Well, they're fine at the end. They always return me. Thankfully, it's the one thing I can say. Love to thank them for bringing me home, not for taking me, but making sure I made it home. They could have done anything they wanted with me. And I'm thankful I got to live my life somewhat normally.
No, I asked them once, you say that. I said, why do you always make us forget? Because it's always a shock. And the guy, the alien, said to me, oh, we want you to live a normal life. But you can't live a normal life if you know what we've done. So, and I was like, yeah, all right, well, maybe. But at the same time, I was thinking, plus, if you don't know, you can't go tell anybody. You can't make trouble for what we're doing. But I get it. Knowing what we know, it's a little hard, even at this age, to balance it with a normal life. I can't watch movies about aliens because they're so bad. There's some reason in movies now, aliens are all snarling beasts. Have you noticed that? They're like, they got claws and they're drooling. They came here in these advanced spaceships, but, they just drool and snarl a lot. One thing about these aliens, I will say, I've seen it like a tall gray walk towards us, and his bearing was regal. He looked around and he knew that everything that he could see around him, he was in control of. And he didn't slink or sneak up to the car, tug at the handle. No, he walked like Julius Caesar and told us what to do, and we did it. And in that one moment, there's something very humbling to look at a being and something in you, your instincts say, that is better than us. That's superior. They are more powerful than we are. But they're kind of civilized, even though what they're doing, I think, is quite bad. They're very polite, some of them professional.
They don't have to talk to you at all, but they do. They'll have conversations, they'll answer questions. So they could be a lot worse.
Yeah, it's very strange. I can't look what I say. I'm a doom and gloomer. I make a lot of noise and everybody hates me in these spaces because I'm sounding, what I'm trying to do with all this coming public, I'm sounding an alarm. The kids are being taken and abused in families, forced to reproduce against their will again and again over decades. And nobody,
generations,
and everybody else is out in the desert with flashlights and singing Kumbaya. How about stopping these things? I don't know how, but being aware this is what they're doing. And they told me they're moving in. Nobody likes what I have to say. Nobody likes the sound of an alarm clock.
Yeah.
Okay? But I'd rather be awake. So
yeah, I've noticed that too, where when I was a kid, I don't even remember when it came out, but Independence Day, with Will Smith. A scene in that movie is the one kind of portrayed crazy lady. She gets so fascinated by this alien invasion, she runs to the top of the roof and she joins a party of people who are excited to be partying underneath this alien spaceship, like they wanted to be taken.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that.
Have a sign say "Take me" or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember watching that and thinking to myself back then, like, yeah, right. Like, there is nobody that would ever want to put themselves in a position to be abducted like that. And that was before I even thought about this stuff the way I do now. And here we are now, and they're like, hey, we're having a group go out and we're gonna call in these things, and if we're lucky. I'm just like, you guys are crazy. Like. The other character in that movie is the drunk dad, and I'll quote him: "We need to get as far away from these things as we can, like we just need to go." And that's how I feel. But
we speak to people all the time who say, "How do I get abducted? I want to be abducted." Yeah. Well, first thing, make sure your mom was abducted. Because that's the only reason they take us. They follow you through generations. They abduct one little girl. Next thing you know, they abduct 3 offspring. And then if we all had kids, they would abduct them. So they're increasing their sphere of influence with every generation. But yeah, there were people who tell me how bad they want to be abducted.
Yeah.
So for the future, let's hope it's Sean's and not mine. They taught him how to do things. They tried to advance him.
Right. Why would they spend so much effort and energy and answering questions and teaching me things if they're here just to conquer? So I don't know. I don't have the answers. They never told me. I don't know.
All right.
I agree with them.
I got one final question for you guys, and this is like a concluding question.
Sure.
You guys come out and you start talking about this stuff. What has been the everyday life social reaction to this? Especially Sean, as somebody who's a former retired police officer, are you in communication with people that you used to work with? I mean, do they think that you've lost it like your brother did when you first told him that you were taken too?
I haven't really had any discussions with them about it. I don't really see any of them.
Okay.
I don't see anything good coming from it. Nobody's going to, it was, when I started talking about this in 96, it was...
There have been other reports in our city, though, of UFOs. There was, when I was working there was a woman who called and was reporting UFOs landing in her backyard. They took a report from her, and 2 other officers from my department each took photographs of UFOs. One while he was working, one was off duty.
And they never reported it, of course, because you don't want to lose your career and your pension that you've worked so hard for. There was a crop circle here around 99, 2000, right in town.
Wow.
And it's connected to UFOs because that night when it was formed, it's a cornfield. There's a lot of corn here. A woman who had a newborn was breastfeeding, and she got up in the middle of the night and sat in a rocking chair by the window. And she heard this sound. She said it sounded like a harmonica being played backwards. And she looks out, and there was just over the crops was a flying saucer. And she reported that, and then they discovered this crop circle the next day. So there's a lot of activity here. But I don't talk to friends. The most you're going to get out, friends is, well, I believe that you believe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we're at this point, a lot of people can tell we are absolutely serious and wherever we are. But yeah, that's just the way it is. However, I had a girlfriend who was very tolerant. At that point, I was going out with a camcorder every night and taking footage of anything weird, because I had a craft go over my head in 99. I said, I'm never going to be without a camera again. So I dusted off my mom's old camcorder that was, like in a cupboard covered with dust. And where are you going with that? Oh, I'll be back. I'm taking UFOs. And I ended up getting some footage. And it ended up on our local CBS affiliate where they declared it to be convincing evidence. And that night, CBS News overnight, January 10th, 2000, ran my interview and my footage where they declared it to be convincing evidence.
Wow.
So, yeah. So we're just at peace with it, and we don't bring it up to friends. I'm grateful for social media because you're able to, 90% of people hate me. They hate what I understand, the way I say it. That's what they're really mad at. You're not apologetic. You're too bombastic. And that's another thing that's going wrong in this field. They're like, well, let's just agree that nobody knows anything about the UFOs. And everyone is like, yeah, that's good. Let's all agree to that. Well, some people do. And we're the people they should be turning to for answers. You look at Grush and Lou and Barber and Greer, the experts. Not one of them has ever seen anything. They haven't seen a flying saucer at a relatively close distance to see details. They've never.
Barber claims to.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
He was the helicopter pilot.
was it an egg?
Yeah.
Was it the egg place
it was
that
the
we
egg.
all love so much? Okay. But the rest of them have never seen anything.
Admittedly say that they've never seen it. And those are the biggest voices. There's other voices out there who are popular who have never seen anything.
Yeah, Grush is like, he's testifying before Congress as an expert. He's like, I know a guy whose wife has a hairdresser and her husband knew somebody from the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he cuts the lawn. He says it's all real. They're like, wow, Mr. Grush, can we quote you on AP? And we sat there and we watched these experts who've never been face to face with an alien. They've never felt the intrusive telepathy, the mind control. They've never been introduced to hybrids. They've never performed telekinesis. They've never seen or done anything, and they're the experts. And in fact, those congressional hearings were one of the motivating factors for us saying, enough is enough. We are the experts. We have more information to offer than these so-called whistleblowers. Lou Elizondo with pictures of a mowed lawn. Oh, look, it's a flying saucer. Are you kidding me? If that's what this guy is passing off as a disclosure, then get a new hobby.
Yeah.
Get a new job. Leave it to those of us who know what we're talking about. And it's not just me and him, of course, it's thousands of people that have done this in our case for more than half a century now. So, spite. That is the reason people say, why are we coming forward? Spite. We are tired of experts who are not experts saying they are experts and being lauded as experts. There's a new guy, Brown, his name is. Well, he's a hero because he once saw a photograph of a triangle. And he's worried for his life. They're going to kill him because he talked about a photo he saw of a triangle. dude. They were giving us a parking ticket. They're not. It just bothers us. It does, not just for us, but for all the other abductees like Fringe and Amy and Hiker Girl, and I could go on and on and on. AJ and 369 that have very legitimate, convincing stories. Some of them, including military, being in the military at the time of these sightings. They have so much to say. Nobody cares. We're just turning to people who are digging through like German files from 1932 to try and prove the kids are being taken today. Focus on the aliens. Stop. And they all just want to hate on the government. They're not mad. They're mad if you're more mad at the government for not telling you that aliens are abducting people than you are at the aliens who are abducting people, you got your priorities wrong. Everybody loves to hate the government for keeping it quiet, but it's very good they did. So I think not telling people is the right move. And I think it still is. Not until we can do something.
We agree on that.
Yeah.
The government's doing the right thing by keeping it quiet. People don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them.
People on Twitter want to hear it, but your grandmother at 93 doesn't want to know. Yeah. And neither does your little 5-year-old. Your children. They don't need to know this right now. They could find out some other way. We don't need, a press conference by the president in prime time going, "Hey, that's the news for you." You know what I mean?
My son's 7-year-old, and he asked me questions, and I'm just like, I'm terrible. That's why I'm glad my wife is here, because like he'll be like, "Daddy," or I don't know, "Are aliens real?" I'm like, "Yeah." And my wife will be like, "Oh well, actually, I'm sure he's probably one of those kids at school that will say, 'My dad says,' and oh boy, here we go." I know his school. He told his school teacher that because I tell him he's not allowed to listen to my show till he's an adult, and he said to his school teacher, because I guess she was asking kids what their parents do, and she asked him, and he said, "My dad, he's a podcaster, but you're not allowed to listen to the show till you're 21." And and she's like, "Okay," but then she asked him what the podcast was, and I'm like, "Oh man, she's gonna look me up." So anyways, listen, fellas, I appreciate you coming on and sharing. And
thanks for having us.
Thank you for giving us so much time.
For sure. I could go
important things.
I think we could go definitely longer. I have I have to wrap it up in here because I have to go pick up my son from school. So
fantastic.
But I appreciate you guys hopping on with me, and I'm sure we'll talk again.
Okay, we appreciate you.
Tony, thank you. And, our hopes and prayers are with you guys.
Thank you.
And just thanks. And it's great to meet you.